Today I'm down in Palm Springs taking a look at the most off-road capable electric vehicle Hyundai has ever built, which is not necessarily saying a great deal since up till now we've had mostly on-road focused EVs in North America. But this is the new Ioniq 5 XRT for 2025. Let's talk about the changes and why it's still really more of an on-road focused EV. But you could take it on trails like we're going to drive on today. First, with the looks. Hyundai has updated the design, front and rear, for 2025, but the XRT gets a unique bumper. And if you come in real close, you can see some of these little digital pixel details here. I'm not the biggest fan of this look, but I think it does work well with the darker paint colors. If you're looking at a white version, which they showed us when this model launched, I think it was a little bit too stark, a little bit too panda to me. We have big recovery hooks, and this is perhaps the most surprising thing. These are recovery hooks like you'd find on a Ford Bronco. Big steel hooks, and they're fully attached to the unibody of the Ioniq 5. Shockingly sturdy, really, but that is, of course, due to the nearly 5,000-pound curb weight. Now, coming around the side, you'll see more of that digital pixel camo there. We get unique XRT wheels. These kind of give me a similar vibe to what we see in some other Hyundai XRT models. And then unique tires. So these are all-terrain tires, 235/60 R18s. This is going to give you more cushion than we find in most of the Ioniq 5s out there. And we're going to get a little bit of a lift. It's just under 1 inch of an increase, so we now have 7 inches of ground clearance. Think of this in the same vein as the Ford Mustang Mach E Rally. So not really an off-road kind of vehicle, but something that's designed to go further off the beaten path like the trail that we're on here. Now, if you come all the way around to the back, you'll notice the more controversial design element, at least for me, again with the lighter colors. And that's going to be that the entire bumper changed in the back to give us better departure angles, but then this became a black element. So if you go in real close, this is that same digital pixel thing going on right there, but then that's body colored and that's body colored right on either side. So you have this big thing of black that comes up in the rear, and it's just a little bit discordant, I guess I'd say, in the lighter colors. We have the same digital pixel taillights we find in the rest of the lineup, and of course 2025 brings a rear windshield wiper to every model. Also coming to the XRT, and you'll find this in everything except the Ioniq 5N, is the J3400 or NACS charge port right there. Now, that means that you will have access to Tesla supercharger stations all across the United States, but it also means that you're going to have a lot of adapters in your life, because if you take this to a CCS station, which you will need to charge at its maximum rate, you have to use an adapter, which is more commonly associated with Teslas these days than with other Hyundai models. But I think that's a decent price to pay for future-proofing the Ioniq 5, and that's what's going on here. In the future, Tesla has committed to all V4 stations rolling out over time, and that's going to allow this to charge at its fastest rate of 10% to 80% in just 20 minutes. Now, every XRT is going to get the big battery, 84 kilowatt hours of capacity, and every model is going to be all-wheel drive. So 320 horsepower, thanks to an approximately 220 horsepower rear motor and an approximately 100 horsepower motor on the front end. No electronic lockers, nothing like that, but we do get modified traction software with 2 new modes, so you now get 3 off-road modes: snow, mud, and sand, which you will definitely try out here. Now let's talk about some of the interior changes. The interior sees fewer changes than the exterior. We find the same legroom and headroom, front and rear. We don't have an as adjustable front seat as we find in the limited trim, so no power ottoman or anything like that. We get these rugged themed floor mats. Those I definitely appreciate because they're going to hold the muck and guck a little bit better. We get the XRT logo embossed on the seat back there. Up on the ceiling, you'll notice no glass roof. That is not available. Also not available inside, no head-up display in the dashboard like we find in the limited trim, but we still get the 2 big screens in the dashboard. Sort of mimicking the camo from the outside, we have a unique treatment to the door panels with the XRT logo and some of those digital pixels there. But you'll notice that these seats, even though they're perforated, they're not ventilated. So the new button module here in the center console does not include that ventilation button. We have the wireless charging mat there, lots of buttons. Again, if you want to know more about this interior, be sure and check out the other video. Down here we see the only other major change, which is this terrain mode button, and that, you can see, allows us to cycle through sand, snow, and mud. The other drive modes, those are selected via this button here, and that's where we get sport, Normal, My Drive, and Eco. So you do have a few different drive modes to choose from. The back seats, those are basically the same. So you can see, nice big back seat design there. Black is the only interior color currently available. Now in the cargo area, you'll notice that there is no spare tire back here. Under the load floor, we have the big subwoofer module right there in the middle of everything. This is what those adapters that you will need look like. Remember, you will need an AC adapter for charging at level 2 charging stations, and a CCS to J3400 adapter for charging at regular CCS stations. Again, if you charge at a Tesla station, it'll be 30 minutes for 10% to 80%. If you charge at a CCS station with this adapter, you're going to cut 10 minutes off your charging stop because you will be able to power this with the voltage required to charge this battery. That's one interesting twist with the Ioniq 5. Tesla charging stations typically peak at around 250 to 255 kilowatts, which is actually higher than the peak charging rate on this Ioniq 5. It's just that this cannot do that with the lower voltages provided by the Tesla stations, so it has to use the rear motor module to actually bump that voltage up to what the battery can accept, and it can't do that as rapidly as the full charge rate for the battery packs. That's why it's going to take a little bit longer. All right, let's get the XRT out on the trail. The first thing you're going to notice is that this has the exact same motor setup that we find in the other all-wheel drive Ioniq 5s. So 320 horsepower, skewed mostly towards the rear, so about 2/3, 1/3 on that power balance. And that means this definitely has a lively feel out on trails like this, especially if you put the drive mode into sport. You'll really feel the rear end swinging out if you're a little bit too happy on these sandy surfaces, but that makes this more fun than something like the Subaru Solterra or the BZ4X. If you want more of a traditional feel, I would say for an off-road vehicle, you can choose mud, sand, or snow, and there it's going to try and balance power a little bit more 50-50 until you're commanding more than 200 horsepower, of course. I think that Hyundai did a really decent job balancing the priorities with this vehicle. It doesn't feel like a Solterra. That wasn't quite the mission. I would say that's the closest thing we might find to this, however, in the EV segment. The Solterra has more ground clearance. It has a softer suspension tune, so it's certainly going to be more comfortable on these bumps and dips and dives here. On the other hand, the Solterra is not going to have the fast charging rates that we find here or the long range. When you put everything together, if you plan on going out further off the beaten path, I might choose this over the Solterra simply because you're not going to have to worry about charging once you get there, or in order to be able to get back home. And that is a significant worry with something with as limited a range as a Solterra and charging that's that slow. Now, versus the rest of the competition, I guess what is the competition? We have the Mustang Mach-E, which is the GT version with some all-terrain tires on it. That's the rally trim, so we do get a little bit more clearance, but mostly we get just heaps and heaps of bonkers power. If you want to power slide your vehicle in the mud, I think that is the better option. This doesn't have quite that kind of feel, but I think that Hyundai found a decent balance, all things considered. If you want something that's more capable than this, with more clearance, more off-road intention, more protection, etc., you're going to have to wait until we get the Rivian R3 or the R2, because those are definitely more along those lines, but exactly when they'll be on sale, that's anyone's guess at the moment. They could be on time, or they could be a little bit late. We just don't know at this point in time. But the Ioniq 5 XRT, it's basically on sale right now, so if you're looking for something today, you might want to get one of these. It's a bit difficult to talk about efficiency at this point because we haven't been driving this on our usual test loops, but bear in mind that all-terrain tires generally reduce fuel efficiency, and we have the extra ground clearance, which also factors into the efficiency numbers. So this is probably going to be the least efficient all-wheel drive version of the Ioniq 5. If you've decided that an XRT is right for you, be prepared to spend $49,375 because that's where this model is going to start. Other than paint options, there's really nothing to choose on the XRT. Now, that means that if you want features like the head-up display, the ventilated seats, you want nicer floor mats, etc., or, importantly, wider tires for driving out on the road, you're going to want some of the other trims. And you may pay more for those because the limited trim starts less than this as a rear-wheel drive model, but will be more than this if you want the all-wheel drive version. I have to admit, if I were looking at something like this, I probably would just start with a regular Ioniq 5 and modify it myself, but this is going to give you that kind of modification of course with a factory warranty. Some folks out there are really going to love the extra inch of ground clearance, but I would say if you plan on taking this further off the beaten path, keep in mind we don't have a spare tire in the back. That is still missing, and we don't have any added underbody protection. There is still, of course, battery armor under there because every version of the Ioniq 5 has a protected battery tray, but you don't find any extra protection in the XRT. The recovery hooks, those definitely look pretty cool, and I could see them being really handy out on a trail because you might get a 5,000-pound EV stuck more easily than some, but also I don't think people are going to really take this to places where it might be that important. However, if you live out in the country in a snowy or a muddy area, they may give you a little bit of added peace of mind just in case you might find yourself in a ditch and need to get pulled out. You don't want to yank on a wheel or something like that. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comments section below. At the moment, every XRT is going to get the $7,500 rebate, I guess you could say, from Hyundai because there's no tax credit yet. That tax credit is coming in a few months, according to Hyundai. They're very hopeful, let me put it that way. And in the meantime, they're offering $7,500 cash back on every new purchase or $7,500 on every lease of the XRT. And that applies actually to the entire Ioniq 5 lineup except for the N. So that's actually another reason to buy this over some of the competition that may or may not have that tax credit, like the Mach E Rally, which apparently has lost it for 2025. Let me know what you think about that, and of course, check out the related videos down there. See all of you later.